I'm Bill Auten of Auten Claims Management.
I'm Chantal Roberts of CMR Consulting, and welcome to the Art of Adjusting podcast.
Today, we're going to talk about life as an insurance adjuster from the perspective of property, auto, liability, or workers' compensation adjusters. Our goal is to bring interesting topics in the world of claims adjusting to people who are working as an adjuster now and to people who are considering a career as a claims adjuster. Hey, Chantal, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I feel much better. I have a new camera, so you're going to see a little more of my background, I think. So,
Yay.
yeah.
Yeah, and you're looking good.
Oh, thanks. So are you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So
Well,
I have to train myself to look at the camera because it's a little higher than it used to be,
right.
and it's tricky. So,
I
but
kind of
I
feel
think
like
I got it.
I got the shady eyes going around because I got like you and then you and then you and then you. Yeah. I guess that joke would only work on YouTube, but
Oh yeah, because
yeah.
of the multiple images. But I don't let it switch, and I don't keep multiple
Mm-mm.
images. I got to
I oh
keep the person I'm talking to right front and center, or I'll lose
y-
focus.
yeah, I keep it both on both you and me when we're talking, except for when we have a guest, and then I'll put it solely on the guest. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I
I'll
figure
let it flip back and forth the way it does when anyway, what are we yammering on about?
I have
Welcome to
no.
today's podcast.
Today's podcast is actually one of your favorites, something that you're very,
Yeah.
very passionate about. It is the journey from being a novice adjuster to being an expert
Yeah,
in
because
claims handling.
all the experts out there were novices at some point in their career. And
Absolutely.
if you're a novice, sky's the limit.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then I would dare say, and I think that you would agree with me, even though we may consider ourselves to be quote unquote experts, we would still kind of consider ourselves to be novices because you learn something every single day as a claims adjuster. And that is what I think is fun
Mhm.
about being in insurance and being a claims adjuster.
Absolutely. Um, so we have a little bit of an outline we can follow loosely here.
Yeah.
And to begin with, the career path of a claims adjuster is something to kind of pull apart and explain, kind of how you start and how your career progresses from the beginning to eventual expertise and retirement. So I'll let you know that
What's
last part in a few
retirement?
years.
Yeah. Yeah. What's retirement?
I don't know. I think it's when people go to bed and never
Oh,
get up again.
oh, yeah, because they're retired, because they're tired
They're
and
tired. Yeah.
they're tired. Yeah, so Kevin Quinley, who we should actually have on the podcast because he is a claims expert, a thought leader in claims. He often says that nobody ever gets into claims willingly. And
Correct.
I actually don't know of anybody who willingly got into claims. Usually you hear about people going into the agent side of it or maybe underwriting or whatever. But claims adjusting just doesn't sound like it's fun. Let's get yelled at for 8 hours a day. Woo, doesn't that sound like fun? But when you look at the career path of an adjuster, you can start off straight from high school. At least that's what the Bureau of Labor Statistics says you can. I would disagree. And looking at LinkedIn and Indeed and all of that, I think you see most of the carriers want a college degree. But I can say that I don't think that's that important, quite frankly. I have taken people who are, I guess, similar paths or whatever, and like a car mechanic or a car repair person or perhaps a construction worker, and taught them how to read a policy and made them adjusters. So really, you could even be a novice at 35. You don't have to be 18 or 21 or whatever.
Yeah, and being a novice in claims doesn't mean you are a novice in some other skill. It might mean that you're actually very proficient in some other skill, and those skills translate. Um,
Yes.
I had done a blog post with a list of various types of professions that translate well over to claims, and automotive, construction, investigator, like police
Police.
investigations,
uh,
paralegals make great adjusters.
Paralegals make the best adjusters, absolutely, because we had, not just paralegals, but also the, like, customer service representatives for plaintiff attorneys, if you've been hit by a big rig, those kind of guys,
Mhm.
and, they made the best adjusters because they were finally getting credit for the work that they were doing. They were doing the same work.
Right.
The only thing we actually had to teach them was how to read the policy and to fully investigate it, because all they were used to doing was talking to their own client, because they can't talk to the insured or anything like that. Whereas as a claims adjuster, you do have to do an investigation where you talk to everybody kind of deal. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
I think someone with some journalism background would
yes.
be a great fit for the job. Even
One of
someone who's a photographer. Um,
Yes. I was just getting ready to say, if I can interrupt you,
mhm,
as I always do. um, One of the best adjusters that I ever had was a photojournalist.
mhm,
And it was because he knew what the story was. And then again, all I had to teach him was to put that story into the four corners of the policy.
right.
That's all I had to teach him. So,
Yeah. So the point is that newbie adjusters are not planted in crops out in the field somewhere, and they don't sprout up out of the ground like new virgin little
mm,
humans. What they are actually people that have various types of backgrounds and strengths that they can bring to the table.
yeah,
One of the most important strengths that an adjuster needs is communication skills.
abs-
They need to be able to um, kind of discuss and describe what happened and the damages. Um, they need to be able to report on their findings. And that might mean a verbal report where they're describing what happened, written reports, or even communicate the damage through the creation of an estimate. And
absolutely.
so that all counts as communication.
Yeah. And I would say it also speaks to your intelligence. Again, you don't have to have that college degree, although a lot of employers are saying that they do want it. I don't think that you necessarily need it. You do have to be a good writer, because you are writing reports. You also write notes. And, like, we will say, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So everything that you do, everything that you say, everything that the claimant, either first party or third party, that all has to be written down in the file. So you need to know how to write. You need to know how to communicate. What I'm doing right now, like I said before we started, is I'm rewriting an article for Insights, the CPCU magazine, and I'm talking about communication right then and there. Don't say that this is a all risk policy. Don't say everything is covered, because the insured's going to get a rude awakening
Yeah.
when they get a letter of declination from the adjuster.
A word that I hate to use very often, but is really appropriate here is the nuances of a claims discussion with a policyholder or claimant. You can't just dump on them that something may or may not be covered.
Mhm.
You can't really handle it that way because something that is devastating to them to even consider that there's no coverage is a really serious deal. And you may not know whether there's coverage yet or not, but you've got to handle that gently. It
Yes.
doesn't mean you're promising coverage, but it also doesn't mean you're dropping a bomb on them and letting them, sleep in fear over the next few days while you figure stuff out.
Right. So that's why communication is key. And, if you listen to our podcast, which we have three listeners. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Um, uh, should we do our shout outs?
Sure.
Eli, Brandon, and Scott. Hi, guys.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so if you listen to
Oh,
our
and
podcast,
Luis.
Luis, now we have
He's
Luis. Oh my God, now we do have four
we
four
do have
listeners.
four. Yeah.
Yay!
I'm
Oh,
going to count
yay.
it as six because I got you and me still too. So
Well,
that's
yeah, but I don't listen to myself. I have to listen to myself all day long. So I tune myself out. Um, anyway, anyway, if you listen to our podcast, that's pretty much all we talk about. We have a couple of different themes, but key in communication is one of our biggest themes, I believe.
yeah. If if you're super intelligent and you memorize the entire policy, but you can't communicate that in layperson's terms,
Yeah.
you're not going to be a real good adjuster. So,
Right.
being able to kind of simplify and I don't want to say dumb things down, but let's face it, the
Break
policy
it down.
language is pretty sophisticated language that's difficult to understand, even for smart people,
Yes,
like
it's tricky.
attorneys and judges.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I do talk about this. I think I even mentioned it 2 weeks ago that there's the Fleisch reading scale and that the policy is on a college freshman level. And, most people don't necessarily read at that. So
And
what
that
you,
doesn't sound like much. If you've got a college degree, you could say, well, I've got a master's degree. Well, I don't have a master's, but if
yeah,
I had a master's degree, I would say, well, freshman in college, that's, peanuts. But the reality is when you read something at that level, it is much different than maybe a ninth or 10th grade level, which is most of the stuff you see on the internet today is
right.
written on a very, kind of low level because people want to read it fast.
Exactly.
They don't want to be reading this, long, involved text,
Mhm.
and sophisticated language gets kind of scrolled past every day. So everything we're absorbing is kind of simplified and broken down to its most simplest form.
Yes.
And hopefully, I'm speaking in a way that is simple to understand.
I think we are.
I think so.
We're not. You need to be curious,
Yeah.
and there has to be an eagerness to learn because one of my pet peeves now is that our insurers are not spending the money to train adjusters. So adjusters have to spend that time and money themselves. And that's what makes you an expert because one of the things that I put in for my college students is a folder called Ninja Tools. And I put down all of these magazines and trade journals that they can start reading and newsletters that they can subscribe to. And if you start subscribing to those things and even just read it every other day, I mean, not every day, every other day, I think it's like Malcolm Gladwell says that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. And I figured it out. If you just did 4 hours a day, it would take like 10 years,
Yeah.
5 days a week, 4 hours a day. It would take 10 years. And imagine if you just did 1 hour a day. I mean, it would take even longer. So that's what it takes to become quote unquote an expert.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So, the concept that as a claims adjuster that you've got to kind of educate yourself, the carrier should be educating you, okay?
Mm,
But where they miss steps and have gaps in their training, you kind of have to fill that yourself. And
absolutely.
um, you do kind of have to be motivated to better yourself within this career. And that's just like any other career. You can't expect to walk into a claims department, sit down at a desk and hope for promotions.
Right.
You got to be the person that's going to demonstrate the knowledge base and the skill set to, either become a really good adjuster in handling people or perhaps becoming a good leader within a team. All that stuff is necessary, and there's a lot of resources available to learn how to do that. And the two that I always talk about, and I have on my list here, is the associate in claims and the CPCU, and those are both offered by the institutes. And
Right.
I know you can talk at length about both of those. We both have those designations,
Yes.
and you have a few more, I believe. So,
Yeah, but they're not that incredible. Well, I'm not saying that they're not that incredible. I shouldn't say that because one is a registered professional adjuster, not the same as a public adjuster. It just means that I am held to another standard, and then an insurance training professional, meaning I can teach insurance.
yeah,
Woo! But talking about these challenges, skipping ahead maybe just a little bit, when we're talking about going from a novice to an expert, maintaining that curiosity, avoiding that burnout, it means that, and a lot of people do not want to do this anymore because I see this at the Greater Kansas City Claims Association level is we get a lot of vendors, but we don't get a lot of adjusters coming to our meetings. And it's because the adjusters are tired, we're burnt out. We want to go to our kids' baseball game, our kids' football game, soccer game, or practice or band or whatever it is. And I'm not saying don't do that. I'm not saying that your child isn't important because, obviously they are. However, in some instances, it behooves you to sacrifice missing one practice or one game to go to that meeting, that claims association meeting, or to take that evening to study once a week to better yourself and advance in your career so that you can have that time to spend with your child later on. I don't know if that made
absolutely. You
sense.
can you can be there are various types of rock stars in this business, and some of them are the rock stars that spend a lot of time outside of work improving their acumen, their knowledge, studying, getting designations. There's other rock stars who are very proficient from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. or 4:30 p.m. every day, and they hit the ball out of the park. And that's both of them are very valuable, and both
Right.
of them can mean a rewarding career.
Mhm.
It's up to your own personal desires and where you want to go with your career that will guide you in how much time you're going to spend outside of work
Right.
on your own personal professional development.
And it is gonna be outside work because again, that's what we were saying is that the carriers don't support this as much. Now, there are carriers still who, if you get your CPCU, you get a raise. The claims department that I worked for, if we got our AIC, we got a 5% raise. And if we got our CPCU, we got a 10% raise. So, and I've never heard of another carrier that did this for AIC, but I have heard it for CPCU.
Mhm.
And of course, CPCU does have facilitated classes. I teach one, but they are at night once a week for 8 weeks, 2 months. That I think is doable if that's what you need to keep on developing your key skills and your key knowledges of understanding like the claims process, understanding how to read a policy language, because even in, I actually have the book here, CPCU 530, the applying legal concepts, it talks about how to read a policy real quick
Mhm.
because that deals so much with our legal environment. And of course, as a claims adjuster, guess what you do all day long? You read a policy.
Yep. The I lost my train of thought.
You want me to go
It
on?
just
I mean,
it
because we
just
were
went
talking about
away.
claims processes, policy language, coverage.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. If you are working at a carrier or even an independent adjusting firm, and you're not sure what their policy is about, extracurricular studies, check the manual, check the employee manual. They'll usually have something in there. If they don't, or you can't find it, ask your supervisor.
Mhm.
Um, and if your supervisor says, "Well, we don't really offer anything like that," ask, make the case for it.
Make
Say,
the
look,
case.
I'm spending a lot of time studying to get these designations. Here's how it's going to improve my value to you. And I was wondering if you would help reimburse the cost, maybe allow some company time for me to study, and then maybe a raise or a bonus if I successfly pass.
Yes,
The worst
I
they can say
totally
is no,
yeah,
right?
exactly. I totally agree, and I'll give you you know, an example. Ask them to pay for your first, like, test, your first try, and if you fail it, then you have to I mean, it's kind of like a no harm, no foul for them.
Sure.
They're not gonna be spending money outrageously. What we did, at my old company is we did allow 1 hour a week for the adjusters to get off the phone and go downstairs to the break room and study for their A because we made AIC for our adjusters mandatory. We found, and I know we're talking to adjusters, not necessarily the C-suite, but maybe, Eli and Brandon will become C-suite one of these days. Uh, we found that we had less mistakes in our claims adjusting if our adjusters at least had an AIC. So we made AIC mandatory.
Yeah,
Mm.
I making it mandatory is I think that could be a little heavy-handed, but I like the idea.
Yeah. I mean,
And
you get a raise too, and we gave you time and
yeah, and it's not, I don't think the AIC is something that, I'm sure there are people who've taken those tests and it
could
just
be a
didn't
bad
work
test
out.
taker or whatever.
And that's fine. And that's where you get into problems, and it
Yeah,
might be more of an HR discussion than anything
true.
else, but um, I
And
do
we
think there's a lot of value to having that designation for anybody in claims. So if you're out
right.
there and you're considering, or you're already on your way to starting your career, AIC, go get it.
Yep. And we digress a little bit. There
Yeah.
are a lot of specialties in claims that you have, and like I said, we found that, and of course, we like to cross train our adjusters. Back in the day, we liked having multi-lined, and I still like multi-lined adjusters because I think that sometimes if you work property claims and then you get switched over to an auto claim, you go, I remember this one claim about a barn or something, and this and this and this happened. I wonder if that is the similar or this is something similar. So you don't necessarily have to specialize inside a claim. Me personally, when I'm talking to people who are interested in becoming claims adjusters, I tell them to go to, like the Big 10, the big carriers, go with one particular because they will try to pigeonhole you, like just property, just homeowners property damage, or just homeowners liability, or just automobile total losses in the state of Arkansas kind of deal. I mean, it was just crazy how
Mm.
pigeonholed they get you. And then I'd say stay there for 3 years, 4 years, something like that, and then switch because that's going to make you a well-rounded adjuster. And plus the fact later on you can become an independent and charge an outrageous amount and become a billionaire like Bill is. Yeah, so there you go. So Bill, you want to respond to this?
There's no bill in billionaire. So, yeah, the idea that you can specialize in claims is a concept that I have kind of promoted to a lot of people. And what I mean by that is yeah, you can go property or you can go liability, or within property, you could do homeowners or you could do commercial large loss, or you could be someone who specializes in something very particular, like medical device claims, or put maybe
Cargo.
theater equipment claims.
Yes.
If
Art.
you get into a carrier that specializes in a field, there's some carriers out there that specialize in churches,
Hmm.
and you learn all about organs and
Yes.
the what do you call it? Well, just the
The
altars and
belfries and the bells
yeah, all that stuff.
and the bats that are in
And
them.
the beds, yeah. I mean, churches have some amazing architecture associated with them, and they often have roofs, these beautiful slate roofs that are just, multicolored, and they've got these spires and the steeples and I've handled many church claims in my day,
Mhm.
and they're very interesting, but you're not going to take somebody who's handling, homeowners water damage claims all day long and send them out to one of these church claims. So, specializing in a particular niche
Mhm.
you can become an expert all of a sudden
Yes.
in that in a very quick way, as long as you can demonstrate that you have proficiency and also that the people in and around that kind of environment, to where you're not just an expert, but you know how to get the people that you need to help out.
Yes. I'll give you another one, farm equipment,
Sure.
any kind of heavy equipment. You've
Yeah.
got farm equipment, logging equipment. We handled all of that kind of stuff back in the old, and we were especially known for semi tractor trailer rigs.
Mm,
And, again, one of the things that you as an adjuster moving from novice to expert. And again, you may need to do this on your own, which is regrettable, but I can understand how a carrier can't do this for all of their adjusters. But take a day off, partial day or whatever, and go to your local Freightliner or Peterbilt truck or, dealership and body repair place and ask to take a tour. Those guys usually are just tickled pink to have an adjuster come and express some kind of interest in how they repair things, what that doomahickey is called. Like the fifth wheel is not the spare tire kind of deal.
mhm,
Uh, and it's really nice and it sets you above your competition when it comes to time for raises or promotions or whatever, because now you know what a midship blinker is. It's not something that's in the middle of a yacht,
mhm.
that sort of thing.
The, uh, the prevailing attitude today, and I hate to say this, but they're among younger people in the professional world, it seems like there's a lot of demands placed on the employers. And I haven't experienced directly, but I watch these videos and I see these people complaining about their work environment, that they're not allowed to work from home anymore. They have to drive to the office like it's some big imposition. And there's something to be said for taking your career into your own hands and creating for yourself the career that you want. And you can't rely on your employer to just decide that you're awesome and promote you, or a potential employer to just decide that you're awesome and hire you for a job when there are other candidates out there who maybe did a little more extra work and have a little more things on a few more things on their resume that
Mhm.
sets them apart.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, about taking your career into your own hands, and doing this work yourself. I get it that, again, we want to take our kids to soccer practice and we want to watch the game or whatever, but weigh the alternatives and see which is going to be most beneficial in the long term. Would a short term sacrifice help more in the long term, with these kind of skill sets that you are trying to get? And I'm not saying always jump around, because there is that negative connotation that especially Gen Z jumps around if they're not getting promoted fast enough or whatever.
Is that who we're talking about? I didn't say
I
that,
didn't
Jen.
say that, but
You
no,
said that.
but, one of the things that I'm getting to is this thing about not going into the office and not liking it because they're antisocial or whatever. I'm antisocial. However, um, the issue is you actually end up hearing how we experts talk to the claimants, first party, third party, whomever, the vendors, whoever, and you incorporate that. And if you're working from home, you don't hear that. You don't get those communication skills that we started off with, and that is the reason why you drive 20 minutes to go to the office,
I
even though
have
you don't like it.
I have two of my favorite property adjusters are related to me, and I saw them just yesterday for the first time in a while. And we were talking, they're property guys. So we were talking about Exactimate and learning Exactimate and the benefits of or lack of benefits of actually going through the certifications and getting Exactimate certified. And they kind of poo-pooed that as not necessary, that it's one of these tools that, you dig in and you learn, and you use it and you figure it out as you go. But the difference between them and a lot of other people is that they work in a claims department of 20 or 30 other property adjusters.
Mhm.
And I don't know that they go to the office every day, but I do know they interact with those adjusters. And I do also know that if they have a question on how to do something in Exactimate, somebody in that group is going to know, and a quick email or text message or phone call is going
Mhm.
to teach them. So they have a huge resource by having all those adjusters together. Even in, you know, even an old adjuster can learn something new from a young adjuster. I guarantee it, because while that young adjuster is playing around in Exactimate or whatever other system, chances are they've tried something to see if it worked, and it did,
Mhm.
but nobody
Mhm.
else has bothered to try that yet. And that kid might know something that could impart knowledge onto everybody. So when you work in a team that large, make sure you're interacting with them as much as possible, because you're going to learn a lot more.
Yes. Yes. And I would say that again, that goes back to our communication again, and understanding our key skills, updating your knowledge. This is again part of the ways that you take your career in your own hands and become an expert.
Mhm.
Uh, um,
If you want to be. Not everybody wants to be. Not everybody
no,
wants to advance. A lot of folks are just happy to sit uh, at at one particular aspect of the job, and they're comfortable in that lane, and that's fine.
here's the deal, though. I think maybe I'm looking at it different than you, Bill, because when I say claims expert, I'm talking about someone who's been there for 20 years. Even if, and I did meet a claims adjuster who all she did was total losses of automobiles in Arkansas. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry." And she says, What? Why?" I'm like, "That's gotta be the most boring job ever. Like, that's all you do for 8 hours a day? That's horrible." She goes, "Oh no, I love it." And that's all she wanted to do. She wanted to stay in that lane. But you can't tell me that she's not an expert.
Right. And you also can't say that that's a simple, boring job, because I will bet you she has found all of the
All
complicated
sorts.
ways
Yeah.
that you have to deal with those types of claims.
Me, I'm
And
like squirrel, and I want to go off and do something else.
Mhm.
you know,
I
I
get a lot
like.
of questions about why we only handle liability claims. And
eh,
it's the same thing. There's
mhm.
a work, like we could probably, I'm not really considering doing this, but we probably could pare it down to just slip and fall claims. That's all we do is slip and fall claims.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
there's so much nuance and contract language, and I hate the word nuance, but there's so many different aspects of those types of claims
Right.
that you could stay busy and become an expert just at that.
And so when I say expert, what I mean is really getting into the nitty-gritty of
Yes,
whatever you want. I don't mean knowing how to handle every single claim ever made
right.
because here's the deal. although you could probably figure it out. I've never handled a, uh, malpractice. Well, no, I have handled, directors and officers. I've never handled directors and officers. I've never handled jewelry or art, or something like that. But on the flip side, I have handled cargo and homeowners, property and liability, and personal automobile, the property damage and the liability. I've handled heavy equipment. I've handled overspray claims. So does that make me an expert? I don't know. Not in any of them. Maybe a jack of all trades in all of them, but I know enough to be dangerous, in that kind of aspect. Um, what, but I'm not in any kind of niche. Do you want to get into a niche? Yeah, great. Do that. That's fine. I don't have a problem with it. And that's how you can also hone and become an expert, because I'm going to tell you, getting promoted and moving up, it is usually going to be more niche work, like the vice president of commercial liability claims, the vice president of homeowner liability claims, or something to that effect, before you get over to regional vice president and then senior vice president or whatever, you know.
You don't even need a fancy title sometimes
No.
just to be recognized as that guy or that
Yes.
gal that
Yes.
knows how to do a certain thing. And, once you get to that level, you're going to be busy because people
Absolutely.
want help. And not
People are
everybody
going to
can
use.
be an expert at that thing.
Right, right, and I guess that's what I mean by expert. It probably would have helped if we started off defining what expert is, but so overrated with starting off with definitions. There are a lot of challenges. I think we've mentioned them. Is the fact that you would have to take your own time to do that, because unfortunately, a lot of carriers are not, you know, um, doing that. I can send you my Ninja folder, but I think it has a lot of the things that you had already mentioned, like CPCU, AIC, the newsletters like Claims Magazine,
Yep.
Insurance Journal has a newsletter that comes out every day. If you
Claims Pages is a great resource
claims
because it's
pages,
got,
yes.
forms and things and
Mhm.
that you can not only use, even if you don't use them, just looking at them will educate you on what they're for.
Yes, and it gets you used to the language.
Yeah.
I often use claims journal or insurance journal articles, for my students, and have them read, and it's written for an insurance professional. So as a novice, and again, by novice, I mean maybe 1 to 5 years ish. And yeah, 5 years can still be a novice. Um, you know, i- at least you're getting to hear the language. They don't really ever talk about coverage or whatever. However, every once in a while they'll report on a uh, opinion that came down on a particular claims matter. Like there was one that just came down on flooding. Like, what does quote unquote flooding mean out of New Jersey?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, knowing that kind of stuff and knowing that that might apply throughout the whole United States is important.
There was a LinkedIn post I did, and I pulled it up here. It's 2 months ago. Maybe I'll repost it, or
Yeah.
maybe I'll put a link to it when we put
There
this
you
on
go. That
LinkedIn.
would be good. Yeah.
But it has to do with the Japanese word shokunin, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it means to be a person who's achieved a high level of accomplishment in some seemingly simple task.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of value in finding ways to do something that seems simple, but to do it better than anybody else.
Mhm.
And there was a person that had made a comment on LinkedIn about they're getting frustrated um, at their job. They didn't like it. They were bored, and and they were looking for the perfect job. None of the careers that they were considering would quote make them happy.
Mhm.
And I have these conversations with our kids too, because they're they're all graduating from colleges soon and, ready to set off on their own careers. And
Mhm.
they're looking for advice, and they all have this vision that if the career doesn't bring joy to them every second of every day, that it's going to be a miserable life. And the reality is that if you figure out how to do something simple really, really well, you're going to love your job. You're going to want to get out of bed every morning to go, improve it, or try some new idea that you have to make that job go better or make the process better or whatever. And I think there's a lot of value to that.
Yeah, I'm going to give you an example that it is not claims related, but it speaks to that very same idea. 9 times out of 10, if you go to a restaurant and they only have, I don't know, two things on the menu, like a hamburger and a cheeseburger, and you get fries with that, like you basically get what mama gives you kind of deal, and you're going
Right.
to like it. That's probably gonna be the best darn hamburger you have ever eaten in your entire life because they've gotta be that good to only have 1 or 2 things
Yep.
on their menu. And an idea, I would argue that an idea that a job has to make you happy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, um, is not healthy to begin with. And I think that this gets to dealing with our burnout and our mental health, which is important for adjusters because we do have such high burnout and we do have mental health issues as an adjuster because, again, a lot of times when people are frightened because their house burned down, they've been in a car accident, their basement is flooded, whatever, they are frightened. And that being scared comes out as anger. They're kind of two sides of the coin. And so I would say you can't necessarily always be happy in a job. You've got to find your joy
Mhm.
in what you're doing. That's how you're going to avoid some burnout. That's how you're going to stay motivated. I would again suggest, as I've said before, going to your local claims association. Again, it takes time out of your evenings, but you get to talk to other adjusters.
Yeah.
And my husband, of course, is a claims adjuster. He works down in the basement, and we meet in on the first floor. I'm up on the second floor. We meet on the first floor for lunch, and yeah, he's like, "Oh, you wouldn't believe this claim," and so we're talking claims, we're talking things through, and it's like a pressure release valve kind of deal. So I would say don't rely on your job to make you happy. Be
Yeah.
happy outside of things too, as well. You should definitely like your job. I mean, I like my job, but
Yeah. Or at least like most of your job, or,
yes, like
aspects of
most
your
of
job.
it. Yeah.
And if the parts that you don't like become overwhelming, maybe it's time to switch roles, or,
Yeah.
find an, and you don't have to leave claims to do it. You could
Mm-mm.
find another branch of handling claims
Right.
to excel at.
Right.
Sometimes just switching from one company to the next means that you're now, oh, there's so many things that could change when you switch companies. It could be the lines of business that you deal with.
Mm.
It could be the company culture could change. So whenever I hear someone say that claims adjusting job is a horrible job and it's totally stressful, they're mismatched somehow.
Yeah.
They're mismatched in the type of claims or the company culture that they're at, or something along those lines. Because I've met a lot of people who love this job, and they're not up on a soapbox like you and me, telling the world about it,
Uh-huh.
because
Uh-huh.
they got better things to do.
Yeah.
But I think we like talking about it because we like this job.
We're passionate. We're
Yeah.
very passionate about the job. Again, another example is exactly what you are talking to. I know adjusters who dislike doing homeowner property claims because they're dealing with the public who are not necessarily savvy. They prefer commercial property claims because they're dealing with business people, and business people are homeowners, but they may be and are generally more savvy about things, not necessarily their insurance policy, but about things, about the way the world works, you know?
Yep.
And so they prefer to deal with business owners because they find that business owners don't yell at them as much. Yeah, and then there are some who find business owners really, really rude, and they would prefer to work with homeowners. And that's why you're saying, there could be a mismatch.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, 100%. And the two adjusters I spoke of earlier on the Xactimate topic, we also talked about their roles because one had traditionally, 20 some odd years ago, started out only handling homeowners claims. The other, and these are brothers, they work for the same carrier.
mm,
And hi guys, if you're listening.
hi.
The other one took a commercial large loss track.
Right.
And um, neither of the two jobs are particularly sexy, right? But they've both been doing it a long time and they're pretty good at it. And so I asked, I said, are you guys still kind of pigeonholed into your, homeowners and large loss commercial? And they're both like, nah, we kind of cross over, whenever there's a shortage somewhere, I fill in and he fills in. So um, it's, it's, it's good to be cross-trained in whatever you do so that
Mhm.
you are flexible. You don't want to be so niche down that you can't jump and help out the team when necessary.
And
That's not
I,
what we're saying.
yeah,
What we're
no, no, no,
saying is
no.
when you want to be good at something, when you want to be expert at something, that's the time to focus on a particular niche.
Yes. But I still say the best way to do it is to become a multi-lined adjuster. And then once you're a multi-lined adjuster, if you figure out, oh wow, I like personal auto, total losses in Arkansas, go for it.
Hmm.
Um as always, I mean, I think um yeah, I just think that more is better. Woo. Um you
I
got
met
to
a guy
understand,
who's handled nothing but PIP claims for the past 20 years.
my God, that would kill me. Absolutely kill me. I mean, that's what I mean, like
Yeah,
squirrel.
but when you talk to him,
He's
that's a
passionate about it, I
well,
bet.
but it's a vast landscape of things
Yes.
that can happen within those PIP claims.
Oh,
You would think that that's got to be boring. You're just, cutting checks to doctors all day, but
yeah. No.
there, I had not realized how many lawsuits get generated over those claims. He
Um,
knows really well.
the other one that me personally, I do not like, but people absolutely love it, workers' comp.
Hmm.
I mean, and there's some like a lot of ethical considerations for PIP and workers' comp. Um, and I'm not saying that's not why I like it, because of course I have ethics. Um, what I'm saying is there's a big, quick turnaround. Like I think in workers' comp, you have to, at least in Texas, you have to pay within 3 days. And I'm
Mm,
like, how do you even do the investigation in 3 days? You're not
right.
finished doing the investigation in 3 days. And they're like, you just have to start cutting checks and then figure it out later. And my little liability mind is blown. I can't get my mind wrapped around that. But there's ethical considerations that adjusters have to do. And of course, if you have a license, you have to get 3 or 4 hours of ethics, depending on your state, uh, uh, when you renew your license too, as well. I guess I should say.
Yeah, the time frames are different on a lot of different types of claims. On auto claims, you've got to turn them around real quick.
Hmm.
Auto PD, if you're
Hmm.
doing like collision losses, you better have those moving pretty quick. If you're
Absolutely.
doing first party property losses, windstorm claims with roofs, you're probably turning those over within 7 to 10 days, maybe 14. Everything's relative.
Yeah, it depends
You
on
could
the
have some
state.
of
it
those
depends
that
on
can
the
stay. Yeah, you could have some of those that stay open
policy.
for months
Yes.
if there's a dispute or something. But on the liability side, we've got people who are injured and they're not even healed for 6 months to a year after the incident. You're not
Right.
settling that claim for
Mm-mm.
a while.
Right.
So It's uh,
It's
there's a
knowing your
really
policy.
big, wide spectrum of claims and the activities associated with them.
W-
So if you can't find something, or if you don't feel like you're in the right spot, look around. There's probably somewhere else where you're going to fit better.
Or contact us because we have opinions
We
and we
do
are not, shy about sharing them with you.
big fat opinions.
Big fat opinions. You know, one of the things I do want to point out is what since we're talking about the policies and state rules and regulations at the beginning, because this is one of my passion things, is at the beginning of every year we go over the good faith claims handling uh, rules and regulations that most states have, and that is when you're reading a contract, or which is the policy, knowing about the contract of adhesion, this rule. And in fact, again, like I said, I was rewriting an article for Insights, and I just happened, ironically, to put the contract of adhesion in there because it was talking about, uh, or to the point of a New Jersey appellate court case ruling on flood. And it was looking up a definition of what the word general meant and how it applied to flood and how that applies to the contract of adhesion. Can you tell me about a contract of adhesion at
Sure.
all?
In fact, I was just thinking about this morning,
Ah, how about it?
and how you have to deal with policyholders
Mm,
um, when you're explaining an insurance contract or dealing with a claim in general. The contract of adhesion means that it's drafted by the insurance company, the big bad insurance company with a bunch of lawyers
yep.
have put this thing together. And there are some benefits in that policy for the policyholder.
Hmm.
And there's some, I don't want to say benefits for the insurance company, but there's some protections that the insurance company has embedded in that policy as well. And that's to make sure that they're not obligated to overpay claims that would, decimate them financially. So they've done this, they've drafted this complicated, sophisticated document, and now they've presented it to a customer, potential customer, and said, "Hey, this is this is the policy. You can take it or leave it."
Exactly.
And they
There's no
need
changing.
coverage, so they're gonna buy the policy. They've consulted with their agent, presumably, and the agent said, "You know what? This is a pretty good policy. It's going to protect you if your house burns down, that kind of thing." All right, so they signed the contract. Did they read that contract? Did they read the policy when they signed up for it? Probably not. And so the general idea is that the law kind of cuts them some slack because they didn't draft this complicated document. Are they expected to read it? Yeah, but if there's an ambiguity in there, this is a long-winded way to say this,
Oh,
but
that's
if there's an
fine.
ambiguity in there somewhere, then that ambiguity should be construed in favor of the party that did not originally draft the contract, and that's Mr. Consumer, who's buying this complicated thing that they didn't probably bother to read.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that they get a pass. It doesn't mean that the contract can change just because they didn't read it. But what it does mean is that where there's something that's ambiguous or the language is a little complicated and it could be construed one way or the other, any gray areas like that are going to be construed against the party that drafted the policy.
The carrier. And in this particular instance, what I was talking about is the practical advice is for adjusters. uh, this will help, key up your game and everything if you are running into a wall with your manager or whatever. You can start talking about the contract of adhesion and saying, look, we drafted this policy. The insured believes that this is a flood, or they're using the word flood. In this particular instance, it was a water main that broke and flooded the insured's basement, and they were using the word flood. Well, technically, that's not a flood, but because the insured kept using the word flood, the insurer denied the claim because they don't cover flood.
Mhm.
And this is just bad, um, adjusting. I'm just going to be honest with you. This is just bad adjusting, guys, because you need to also, when we're talking about communication, learning to listen and that the insured does not know the other words to use. What happened to their basement? It flooded. That's what happened to their basement. They don't know the word to say a lot of water came in and inundated, this. They're going to use the word flood.
Yeah.
And you, as the adjuster, shouldn't, look at the word flood and go deny, and then you get a bad faith claim. Anyway, regardless, what I'm saying is what the courts did, the appellate court, is they looked up, the word general because the definition of flood was the general inundation of dry land, yada, yada, yada. They looked it up in Webster's dictionary. And guys, that's what you have to do when you have a
Mm.
contract of adhesion and there's a term that is or a phrase that is ambiguous. If it could be read one way or the other, and you're going to find out about it usually when the insured or their agent or their attorney goes, I think it means this. What you do is, and you don't have to have a dictionary on hand. I use Merriam-Webster's online. Type it in there. That's what it means. You can use Black Law or whatever um, dictionary. Boom, there you go. And that's finding coverage.
Yep.
And it saves money on litigation expenses. You find coverage, you're honoring what the contract does. You are a hero to the insured, and that keeps the promise that what the policy says. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. And a lot of times, an analysis will reveal an ambiguity that exists or is discovered because things have changed. There's new technology, or there's a new way of building things that makes an old way obsolete. But now you've got this weird coverage kind of gap or loophole
Mhm.
where it's ambiguous now, and the insurance company is now obligated to pay something that they in the past kind of didn't want to make that part of the contract. Well, they can update that policy. They can take the language and fix it so that their interests are protected later on. And you by pointing out those ambiguities and addressing them, it gives the carrier a chance to make any corrections that they should or want
Mhm.
to protect their own kind of finances, and make sure that they're not going to go out of business for paying claims that they originally didn't expect to.
Exactly. So I kind of think that we have talked about everything that we were going to talk about. What do you think?
I think so. We got all the way down to ethical considerations, didn't we?
Yeah. Wow.
Conclusion. I have the word conclusion.
So, what's our conclusion?
Our
Everybody can
con-
be an expert.
yeah. And it's a cool job. Don't let anybody talk you
Yeah.
out of it. So
No, I mean, I love it. I absolutely love being an adjuster. Um, and I'll give you another example why I love being an adjuster. You get to learn something every day, even though I do consider, and you consider yourself, I think, as a kind of like an expert. We still learn things every single day.
mhm.
And speaking of what we're going to be learning next, our next episode drops on August 1st. And we're going to have Quentin Brogdon in, and he is a policyholder attorney or a plaintiff attorney. And he was suggested to us by Nancy German. And he's going to tell us like the 5 things that is going to push our claims into litigation. I am going to find that absolutely fascinating to
Yeah.
to know about. I want to know because I would like to put him and me out of business. I'm an expert witness. That's one of the things that I want to do is put myself out of business. Like, so hopefully all of y'all are doing the right things and nobody gets sued anymore. So he probably doesn't want me to say that, but
Well, if
um,
you're a property adjuster, you're going to want to know
mhm,
what missteps you could make that could make for a bad day for your employer.
exactly.
So I think it's something that everybody should listen to. I'm
Abs-
curious.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be fascinating. Nancy said that he is a really good speaker, so I'm really excited about it.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, anything else, Bill?
No, I think that's it. I'm ready for the next one.
All right, me too. Well, we'll see you later.
All right. Take care,
Bye.
Chantel. Bye bye. Thanks for joining us on the Art of Adjusting podcast, where we talk about life as an insurance adjuster.
If you enjoyed this podcast or this episode, please give us 5 stars and a review. It does help the algorithm pick us up.
Hit that subscribe button real quick and tell all of your adjuster friends to check this out as well. For independent adjusting services, go to www.autin.claims. And for anyone interested in working as an independent liability adjuster, go to the Contact Us tab to join our roster.
In the meantime, you can contact me at theartofadjusting.com for consulting and training purposes.